I'm Janeane, and this is Outside the Box. Standing by to join me is award-winning composer Sherri Chung. She has been recognized internationally as a trailblazing composer for film and TV. Her music transcends genre and fuses inspirations, both traditional and emerging, in support of filmmakers' visions worldwide. Thank you so much for joining us on the show.
Thank you for having me, Janeane. It's really awesome to be here.
So full disclosure, I met Sherri at the She Rocks. Congratulations, you were being honored. What was that like for you?
Thank you. It was like a dream come true that I didn't really know was a dream because I really didn't, I hadn't really heard of the award before. And then when I was doing even the research, it was like, wow, there's just an amazing, I mean, there were 10 years or I guess 9 years before me.
Yes.
Looking at the honorees, the current ones, the previous ones, I'm like, I'm in pretty good company.
Orianthi, and yeah.
Just so it was.
With Etheridge, yeah.
A huge honor,
honor. Well, I hope you come back every year because it's such a fun event.
Yes, absolutely. I'm super inspired and motivated and definitely want to check out new honorees and say hi to old, previous ones. So for sure.
I was laughing. Like after you were done performing, I kind of giggled because I remember talking to you on the red carpet and you were like, I said, do you have a little bit of imposter syndrome? And then you got on the stage and I'm like, holy shit. Come on.
I appreciate that, but I still feel, I feel like, and I wonder if a lot of artists feel that performing artists feel this way, where it's like you're one sort of persona. Well, you're kind of yourself, when you're not performing, and then you get on stage and then something switches and flips or something, and you're just like, oh, okay, I'm just gonna do this. I just go into that mode. So I appreciate that, but then off the stage, I'm like, no, don't look.
Really? Oh yeah.
Yeah.
That's so funny. But I felt like I was really like on Broadway. It was the coolest.
Oh, thank you. Well, I don't know, maybe I've never been on Broadway, but you know what? It kind of feels like that sometimes too. I think a lot of I think just the kind of music that I tend to write in that style is just, as a singer-songwriter is just kind of that sort of cabaret jazz type of thing. There's something show tuning about it that I guess I don't know, I sort of gravitate towards it.
It was really outstanding. And so let me ask you, when you were a teenager, if the teenage you was looking at you now on stage, what would you say? Because were you always this confident?
Oh my gosh, I was always this not confident, but wishing, like doing things, hoping that the confidence will come.
Okay.
So that was definitely me. Yeah, I very much am just literally the grown up version of my my younger self, which is like, I don't know, we'll try this and close our eyes and go for it and see what happens, But yeah, I was I think I was like a lot of little girls that, at that age where you're just, you take your hairbrush and you're just singing in front of the mirror and you're just trying out your voice and your sound, and you're just trying to emphasize and seeing what happens, and sometimes I would get this from my parents.
Oh no.
And sometimes it would be, wow, that's pretty good. It's pretty good, or anyway. So I think it was just, it's very, very much that. It's like just grown up version of my 6-year-old self who would just, try and imitate what you saw on TV or what you saw in movies or that kind of thing. So
were your parents musical? I mean, where did you get your musical interests?
It's interesting. I think there was like a little bit of music that runs in my family, but nobody that was like, I'm going to be a musician. And so I was one of those kids who wanted to do piano lessons. I wanted to do singing lessons. I wanted to do the whole thing. So when I was about 4 or 5, I was like, Mom, I really want piano lessons. I really want to do this. And she's like, okay. And I think like a lot of parents are like, sure, we'll really invest in that at 5 years old. And what are they going to do? We're going to get the piano and the books and the lessons, and then it's going to be like a bunch.
How long is that going to last?
Yeah, and I was so the opposite. I was like, I want this. I kept asking for it, and they're like, okay, all right. My mom played the piano a little bit, so we did actually already have a piano, so it was already there.
Good.
But yeah, so I started training. I say classically because at age 5, I wasn't, because that's really what it was. It was that kind of, sort of formal training, and I was like, oh my gosh, I would practice all the time at 5 in the morning and late.
Really?
Yeah, well, just whenever I was getting up at before school, and so I was one of those kids. But yeah, it was always classical music, and and whatever you're kind of learning, that's like very kiddie music at the time. And I grew up also in the church, so there was a lot of, and it was a very musical church, so it was very was a lot of application for it. There was a lot of
Great.
opportunities to play and
Hmm.
and sing and that kind of thing. And then from there, it was like I started accompanying my school choruses and stuff like that, and just so I was really involved. I would be in. I wasn't so much acting in musicals. I wasn't really an actor, but I was definitely, performing in the pit, as the pianist for musicals all through middle school and high school. So
That is great.
yeah, it was just a lot of application for the musical background. I mean, stuff I was interested in, but it was more like, hey, do you want to do this? Because you clearly can. And I was like, well, I've never done it before, but
But
yeah,
okay,
yeah. So
why
yeah,
not?
yeah, exactly. I mean, there's a lot of interest in just people ask me if you want to do this. I'm like, yeah, I'm going to do that. That sounds fun. So
So here we are, 2022. You're composing for Kung Fu, Gremlins, Happiness for Beginners. How did you end up as a composer?
So that also happened at a younger age that I that got turned on really early. And I think when you're any musician and you're studying in a very well, even if you're not a classically trained musician, but you do have a sense of composers because you say, oh, I love that song, or I love that piece of music, or oh, that was written by Chopin, or that was written by Bach, or that was written by the Rolling Stones, or whatever it is. And
Mhm.
you have I had an awareness that there was um, at least an occupation. I don't know about a gainful employment job, but like certainly an occupation that you could do that. You could write music. And I did learn that I did think that I wanted to be a classical pianist as a profession. I thought that early on, and I did a number of competitions, and I realized early on that level of stress of that, like that kind of performance wasn't as much for me, but the actual creative side of it really was. So
Okay.
I saw a movie, and this is all over, you know. I feel like sometimes I repeat myself because everyone who knows me just knows that the movie that changed everything for me was Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, with an amazing score by Michael Kamen. And it was like, up until that point, I was like, yeah, you see a TV show, you watch a movie, and you understand there's music, you hear that there's music, a story really moves you. But there was something about that score and that movie that just changed how I heard music as a storytelling tool, as an effective tool in that way. And I was like, I don't know what this magic is, but I want to be involved in it. I was so moved by it. So I was like, I want to do that for a living. And I was about 12 or 13, I think, when I saw that.
Really?
It was that young. But there was also back in a time where there's like you don't have the internet. You
Yeah.
don't the references.
Back in my day.
Yeah, back in my but it was. I mean,
Yeah.
and it's like it wasn't what it was. You don't. How do you? My poor parents are just like, well, great, that sounds lovely, honey. But like, and they encouraged it, but no one really knew what you do and how you do it and how you
Yes.
do it. Except, yeah, okay, they make movies out in Hollywood, so I eventually had to get
Well,
myself.
where were you growing up?
I was growing up in kind of all over the northeast of the country. So Maine, Massachusetts, Pennsylvania was where I did a lot of growing up. I was born in New York. I even took a last year of high school in DC. So there was definitely, it wasn't like the middle of the country, and no
Mhm.
offense to that, but it wasn't like a very isolated section of the
Yes.
country. There was definitely city, there was definitely people, and there were resources and that kind of thing. So yeah, but at that age, still, no matter what you're doing, you're just still gonna, go through high school, and you're gonna go through college,
Yes.
and I decided to do a more formal training of composition and theory. So it was like I did that in Jacksonville, Florida, and Jacksonville University, and there weren't that many schools that were doing degrees in actual film scoring. There was one in Berkeley in Boston, which is still great, and I did get into that school, but I wasn't able to afford it, so I didn't end up going there. Um, but that's okay. I mean, it worked out. But I think
Yeah.
I think the formal training really worked for me. I did composition and theory, and then eventually came out to graduate school here in
California.
California. Yeah.
Okay. Where did you go to school in Manhattan? Was it Manhattan where you lived?
No, sorry, excuse me. I was just just public schools all just growing up, and then I went to Florida for my
Okay.
undergrad.
Grab water.
Yeah, yes. I'm just like
Grab your water. I asked because I'm from the East Coast. I grew up in Connecticut and New York. What?
I sense that. I feel like East Coast people sense it.
I probably.
Yeah. Um,
So your parents must be so proud in seeing the journey and where you are.
yeah, I think so, and I really have to hand it to them because they were the kind of parents that, they're, of course they're skeptical because they don't, any kid going into the arts,
Yeah.
you want
How are you going
to,
to make a living?
yeah,
Yeah.
and my dad was always like, what's
What
gonna
are you
be
going to
your
be?
fallback, and
Yeah.
and I did some teaching, some private piano teaching, as supplemental throughout the years
Hmm.
before I could fully say I'm doing this. I'm able now to just only do this for a living. But they should be proud. I mean, and I don't mean that because here's where I've gotten to so much as like they believed and
Yes.
they supported and they
Great parenting.
it really is. It really is.
Really great parenting.
Yeah, they supported and they just said, okay, well, we've done our job. We've done the best we can, and now, but so they nurtured that as much as they could, and you know, guided me as much as they knew how. So, I'm they should be proud because they had a part in this. So
Definitely.
yeah,
Definitely. I know because it really helps to have the unconditional support of your family as
yeah.
opposed to you always like questioning, am I doing the right thing?
Yeah, yeah, and I mean, I think this is like every parent, but like, I still don't think they understand what I do. I still think they're like, I don't get it, but, but you seem to be doing all right. I mean, they'll look at a show and they'll be like, oh, is that your song? And it's like, well, no, the songs are the songs, but this is the instrumental music that I've written. But
Yes.
I don't think any parent really ever understands what their kids end up doing, unless it's like a doctor or a lawyer. It's like, oh,
Yes.
I understand that's doctor, that's lawyer.
Yes.
But
You know, it's so funny. Years ago, I was in this program at Syracuse University called Instructional Design, and it's all about how we learn, the theories of how we learn things. And ironically, I was a bad student growing up. So I learned about how we learn. And I remember telling my dad that I was in this program, instructional design, and he would tell people, yes, she's an interior designer
ah,
or industrial designer. I'm like, no.
yeah, right. I know yeah. They never truly understand, but
Oh, well, it's too funny.
that's fine.
What advice would you give someone right now who wants to possibly potentially go into the field you're in? And here we are in the pandemic, and it's been, which is an understatement, very, very challenging.
Yeah, I would say with this particular industry of not just the entertainment or the music, I mean specifically a film and television scoring industry. It is very difficult to not just to get into it. It's just a difficult thing. It's expensive.
Mhm.
You need a computer system. You need a lot of times you're not making a whole lot of money on one gig, so you kind of have to do many gigs to kind of to make it work. So it's expensive both financially and with your time, and
Yeah.
real estate. And this, by the way, I just wanted to give a just before the advice because it's like it sounds like I'm discouraging, but I would say first and foremost, really you really want it. Like if you really want it, you can totally do it.
Yeah.
There is, and I now more than ever, there's so much content. So there's so many people who are making stories, and they're telling stories in many, many different ways now because there's just a lot of storytellers now. There's
Mhm.
a lot of need for it. So the inventory, if you will, like the opportunity to do something is totally there, more so than it ever was. Certainly, even 5 years ago, 10 years ago, when I started, it's even better. Before me, when I started, it was better than before. So it's always improving. And the other thing I would say too is that, with the technology is there. Like you don't really have to be in LA. I
Yeah.
tell people, I'm like, you should probably get yourself out to LA. If you're in school already to doing this, then and you're at NYU or,
Yeah.
Columbia, and all the really amazing programs that they're all sort of designed to sort of feed into LA. And I think that
Mhm.
if you're already on that track, come out to LA. I think it's a great, opportunity. But you don't
Yes.
have to be. If you're younger than that, or you're not really sure that school is the right thing for
Mhm.
you. The technology, not just with Zoom and the ability to have FaceTime that way, but just the technology, the computer systems of software and hardware to be able to just create music. Just start creating music because it's really what you're
Definitely.
doing. It's creating music. But
Yeah.
it is a difficult industry, so I would say it is about the journey. It's not about the money. It's not
Mhm.
about the awards. It's not about the fame. It is about the journey of finding amazing stories that people are telling, and then trying to find a way to work with them to also tell stories with your music, because that's what I
Definitely.
feel like I am. It's like I'm a storyteller, with my music. So, but it's so I just want to be so encouraging to anybody. Just just do it, make music and connect with people, because that's really what it's about.
Definitely. Well, I also ask this because so many people have lost jobs, and especially opportunities for Gen Z. So let's say, high school students who wanted internships, or they've graduated college and they were planning on this position, and then that is no longer viable. It's really important to give hope right now and optimism.
And that, you know what, and that's so true too, because there's a lot of there are several composers, successful composers that I know of that got their start just by, or maybe not their start, but got noticed just by something they put out on YouTube. I mean,
Yeah.
well, we already know that happens anyway,
Yes.
But
Yeah.
even as film composers, that they were like, oh, I heard, I mean, there's a kind of a famous story of Jordan Peele, who, when he made Get Out,
Yes.
found, he was specifically looking for Black film composers. He's like, well, how come there aren't a lot? And I really want to work with one, and I want to, and so, and he found Michael Abels. And Michael Abels was a concert composer. He was doing his own music, but he had his things out on YouTube. And he said, hey, I, just want to connect with you. And now they do all his they do all his movies together.
Amazing.
And Michael Abels now is, now branching out into film composing as well. So anyway, all that to say is just, it's really out there. If people, and let's face it, music can be very healing, incredibly healing, incredibly,
Oh, yes.
safe, wonderful, so that kind of creation, I just would encourage anybody, especially if you're just feeling lost, just start writing, start creating something,
Yes. I mean, you can put it on TikTok, Instagram, anywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just put it out there. And I mean, that in of itself can be such a cathartic experience.
I agree. And, you mentioned something, because I have put together this creative arts series. It's really a mental health and wellness creative arts series, because I felt the need to give people the opportunity to teach something that they're passionate about in the creative arts. Because really, let's be honest, what would your life be like if you didn't have music? You can't even imagine.
I can't.
Right. And so that lifts people up, being able to create. You don't have to be an amazing guitarist, but, getting into that flow state of composing or playing or whatever you're doing is so needed right now.
Yeah, it really is. It really is. People need, and it's a really just great way to connect with other people or connect with yourself.
Yeah.
You know,
I agree. We were doing The Power of Poetry was the first of the series. And it was so amazing. The instructor, Kara, was outstanding. It was her first workshop. I was telling you this. And it was just so nice to have total strangers connecting online and then sharing what they were creating because of her teaching. And I love this. My idea was never to have somebody just lecture for an hour. It was always to have them engage and to connect all of us, because we are feeling very disconnected.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's amazing. And I think it's so important, because I will admit that as a film composer, a lot of what I do is by myself. It is in solitary. It is alone.
Mm-hmm.
And I will admit that I am a person that I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
But part of my job is also coming out and of my shell and being, in a collaborative situation, and a lot of times also having to be in a very like selling myself kind of situation.
Sure.
Networking. So
yeah,
there's that odd sort of juxtaposition of these two, different sort of very polarizing sides of my personality and what I think it does take to be, a film composer. But it is really interesting that I don't realize, I know that was, something about like, the pandemic, and I mean this in the most respectful way, because I know that the pandemic has been such a difficult and in cases like horrific time for people. But I will say that for me during the pandemic, it's been, in some ways there hasn't been, in some ways to begin with, it was actually a good thing for me. I should say it wasn't a good thing, but it was definitely, there wasn't much of a change for me, because
sure,
in terms of how I was working, I was still able to go into the studio that I work at.
Mm-hmm.
And we all agreed, because we still all had work to do, and we weren't able to take, all of our these giant rigs and systems home with us, just because it's just too big. And
right,
but it was I thought what was really interesting was that for me, I actually started to feel in some cases more connected with people, because, and I know that Zoom has been around for a while before the pandemic.
yes,
But it was not something that was in my,
Mm-hmm.
that was a tool of mine. I wasn't
yes,
actually FaceTime with people. And now people were like, oh, well, we're going to have this meeting. And now people were more readily available to have meetings because now there was this option.
Yes.
And so people were more open even to having meetings and to talking. So I guess what I'm saying is, even though there was a physical disconnect, for me already being physically disconnected from people, there was now this new whole opportunity to just have the FaceTime, and people were more
Yes. But don't you also feel like, as you said, you couldn't say no to the meeting, but your guard is down a little bit. Whereas, we get ready, we're in our introverted bubble, because I tend to be an introvert. And then we have to get ready and hype up for that to be an extrovert, right? And sell yourself. And then you have to go home and recharge your introvert battery.
Yes.
I'm speaking your language, right?
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's absolutely true. And of course it was like, as we know, a lot of people were just like, oh, I have to look, and then just like, whatever, this is my home, this is my world, we're all in this,
Yeah.
and we're all, and so there was, as you said, we could sort of just let down that guard, we could talk
Right.
to humans and say, oh, okay, it's not, no, we don't have to all be perfect or wearing the perfect thing or
Exactly.
thing. So it's
Yeah.
there, in some ways I think that the humanizing aspect of it, while it has been very tragic for so many people, and I think it's also been important for us to just remind everybody to have that reminder that there's a preciousness about life,
Mm-hmm.
and that extends into all of our work and all of our professions, even
Yes.
no matter what face we want to put on for the outside world,
Mm-hmm.
we are all humans, and we are all
Yes.
this part of it together.
And you know what, too, I'm finding is that lately, and I'm doing this too, if someone says, how are you? I'm really going to tell them.
Yeah, yeah, I do the same thing.
You do?
Yeah, I mean, I generally, I sort of round off the edges.
Not in a 10-minute monologue.
Yeah, exactly. No, but I say, yes, I'm good. There's been some anxiety.
Yeah.
I feel overworked. I feel, I say
Yeah,
it. I agree.
exactly. Yeah. What else would you like people to know about you?
Oh, goodness. How confident I feel all the time.
Sure.
Yeah, no, that's a good question. Wow. Yeah, people don't normally ask questions like that. What else would you like me to know about you?
Okay, here's one. Besides being a composer, what's one hobby you do outside of music to take care of your mental health?
Oh gosh, that's actually you know what? I will be transparent and honest, and I will say that is something that I'm really working on. That I'm
Ah,
actively having to work on. I will say that I'm probably one of those millions and millions of people that suffer from gut issues.
I
And
do too.
a lot of my gut issues are, well, it's a moving target, as we all know, but anyone who suffers from it. But a lot of it really is stress induced,
Stress.
lack of sleep
Yep.
induced.
Yeah.
And so I'm really trying, ways to, I'm even exploring hypnotherapy, a gut hypno, like specifically,
Hmm.
I'm definitely exploring meditation for the
Yeah.
purposes of lowering levels of anxiety, just because that needs to be lowered, but
Yeah.
also for the sake of digestion and
Yes.
just becoming more in tune with that. So I've been studying a lot about it, and I actually work with a dietitian just to learn, to have that more personal guided type of thing. So it's interesting because for as busy as I feel sometimes, it's also something that also consumes me on this side of it as well. It's like, oh wow, I really, it's quality of life is important.
Oh, it's everything.
Yeah.
And we tend to ignore it. We're like,
Yeah.
oh, I have a little stomach ache, but I'm just going to go and work. And
And the
yeah.
more people I talk to about it, they're like, yeah, I've been noticing that too. I'm like, well, notice it more, because the trend you're feeling, is probably, I mean, even just simple things like doing breath work before you eat a meal just allows your body to say, oh, I'm getting ready to digest something,
Right.
it's
Right.
just being in tune with my gut is something that I've just, yeah, I've gotten on
Yeah.
that train a lot. So I don't know if that's a hobby of mine or if it's just it's not very exciting, I know, but
No, but it's really common, and there is an enormous amount of anxiety. And so you add in how there's no clear line between work and home, and like you're just taking your work everywhere in your house. I'm looking out of a bedroom right now, and so like there's no half an hour for me to eat lunch. It's like woof something down or eat while I'm working, and that's not healthy.
no.
And then neglecting yourself. So I had a great guest on my show, Dr. Uma Naidu. I'll send you her contact. She has a book, Food and Mood, I think it is.
Oh, wow.
But I do have a lot of gut issues, and you really have to be a detective, I'm sure you know, and figure out, like, is it gluten? Is it dairy? Is it all those things? Have you eliminated those things?
I've done elimination things. I did have to do, even an enzyme, cleansing,
Okay.
killing off bad gut, or an overgrowth of bad gut
Yeah.
bacteria, and then a reinoculation of the good ones, and
Yes.
sort of maintaining the balance.
Yes.
So it's, yeah.
And if what's interesting too is that some people don't know this, but when I was growing up, I had a lot of antibiotics. So that affects your gut, and you can have leaky gut. And then if your gut's not right, you can be depressed. And then that throws everything off. So yeah.
People don't realize, well, I shouldn't say people don't. I have it because I did not realize when I first started looking into this and going to see, actual doctors about it. And now for me, it's just a dietitian. But
Mm-hmm.
I didn't realize that your gut is responsible for delivering all of not just the nutrients, but also your hormones, all of the hormones.
Yeah.
So I originally was going for like what I thought was a hormonal imbalance, and then and she's like, well, it is, but we can't even address that because your gut is really out of whack. So I'm like, oh, okay, that's interesting. So it was really interesting so yeah, depression, anxiety, a lot of those,
Yeah.
Can be external, but obviously we, looking internal, it's not just up here. It's also in our guts, and it's crazy.
Yes.
I've done a lot of research about it, and I'm still learning because, as we know, it's like undiscovered country, just only now in the past decade, which seems like a long time, but it's not. Only now are we really starting to get studies about it and really learning about it. And, before it was just, it's, don't drink milk or something, or
Right.
Eat after 7 p.m.
Yes.
I mean, it's like,
Yes.
it's a lot more than that, but
Exactly.
yeah, it's interesting. Anyway, so probably not an exciting hobby, and maybe people don't really want to know that about my stomach. But
What do you do for fun? Well,
I research my
gut.
Bacteria in the gut. No, but speaking of health, though, I'm addicted to my Peloton. I'm addicted to the spinning and the all the different classes, and I'm just addicted to. Well, I shouldn't say I'm addicted to working out, but I do really strongly believe that's actually directly affects the health of my gut, by the way.
Oh, definitely. Yes.
But I really enjoy that. I really enjoy having that, like, I think it's a good burst of energy, and it keeps me healthy up here, and it really
Definitely.
the rest of the day. So I don't know if that's a good hobby. Wow.
That's a great hobby. Exercise? Are you kidding? That's amazing. Where can people find out more about you?
I have a website, www.sherrichung.com. I've got the Twitters, Sherri_Chung, and then Instagram @SherriChung.
Fantastic. This has been so great. I want to thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the questions and the opportunity. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely.